I see that there are kind of three areas that a company can benefit by adopting a cloud computing strategy. One is obviously around the IT, so saving on costs. It allows them only pay for services as they use them. It's kind of a utility-based type of computing. That would be a very key aspect for reducing costs within a business. And I think from an employee benefit, they really get mobility, greater mobility, access to the company tools when they're outside of the office from multiple devices, so you're not restricted to being at the desk. And I think that achieves a lot for employees in what they want to get out of a work-life balance in today's world. And then from a market perspective, you've obviously got access to the complete market space that's online, as opposed to being restricted to where your feet on the street can go. So completely different dynamic in terms of the environment you can now target.
I think from a capability of the employee as well, as we move into more capabilities of having consumerization, especially with Generation Y, looking towards the tablet or looking towards, for example, Mac or a PC, having their own device and being able to connect to services online, I think as well that enables that capability to your workforce as well.
I'm just going to, I suppose, as the non-commercial person at the table here, I'm really going to focus on one thing where I think I have found the real benefit of the cloud, certainly for my clients, is in relation to cost and access to cloud services, and particularly for startups. I think it's possibly going to be one of the big revolutionary aspects of the cloud, is the ability that it will give small indigenous but startup companies in any economy the ability to access these high-powered software tools and solutions at a fraction of the cost that it would have cost them previously. Traditionally, for startups, having a good infrastructure system, having the IT infrastructure, having a large suite of powerful software products was never really on their agenda, because it's just something that they could never afford. The fact that the cost of integration and connecting up with these services have been greatly reduced due to the cloud helps these companies to scale up their IT function very, very quickly, and helps them to become more adaptable, more powerful companies in a much quicker. I think that's maybe something that we should concentrate on Ireland in terms of creating a competitive advantage, which is obviously something that's part of very much in the government programme. And it's the one area I think is going to be probably the key impact of cloud computing services, certainly in the small to medium business enterprise market in Ireland.
There's a couple of things that cloud computing have meant for small and large businesses. One is the death of the desktop. The desktop is becoming an increasingly obsolete device, because everything that you use lives on the web, and by moving it to the web, you are able to support an increasingly decentralized and globalized workforce. So even in relatively small companies now in Ireland, you see people using dev centers in China and Romania, and designers from all over the globe, by using these aggregated marketplaces that have been made possible by cloud computing, and by using a suite of services that previously were only available to very high-powered companies at very large cost. So timesheet keeping, PO tracking, standard business functions that historically have been sold by enterprise packages costing thousands of dollars are now available for tens of dollars a month to even small enterprises. That means with more automation, you can drive more efficiency out of the individual staff members. So what's happening is we're seeing companies getting a lot more bang for their buck out of the people that are working for them. And that for me is the key benefit. It's mainly small companies, but larger companies can derive those benefits, but it requires that they repurpose their IT departments, because IT departments exist for one reason: to make sure IT departments exist. And one of the things that cloud computing says is you're going to be a different kind of organization in the future. That's one of the key challenges for larger organizations, is to essentially dismantle their traditional IT departments and make sure that they understand in a modern world they're going to have to deal with these larger cloud environments and move away from desktop support and desktop applications.
I think it's very clear that cloud as an infrastructure and as a methodology as well is going to revolutionize business. It's going to revolutionize in particular software. I'm seeing a lot of software as a service companies starting to arrive who are providing competitive solutions to existing software providers who are offering a traditional model. I think for Ireland it's going to offer a huge opportunity for new IT growth, new opportunities. I do a lot of business in the Middle East, and I can tell you for a fact that a lot of or countries in the Middle East are very keen on modelling themselves in Ireland because they've seen the success this country has achieved over the last 20 years. I think we need to stay ahead of the game. I think we will. I've seen signs of that myself. And I think that as a result, as has been said previously, markets are going to become more closer to each other now with the capabilities that cloud offers. So how that plays out over the next couple of years, we'll see. But it's definitely a very exciting time in the IT industry and beyond.
Could Ireland become like a centre, like a global excellence centre for cloud computing, do you think? Do we have the capabilities for that?
So I think definitely we do, and we have a lot of the infrastructure now in place to enable that. I also feel as a nation we're very open to new ideas. We obviously recognise ourselves the need to change, and I think if the investment and effort is put in, we absolutely can become that centre of excellence. Obviously there's going to be some issues that need to be addressed to make sure that we're enabling companies set up here, build the cloud infrastructure, but also supporting that ourselves, so using cloud computing ourselves and being leaders in that space.
As part of a global organisation, SunGard, I mean, we see Ireland as a significant footprint in our cloud capability. So if we look from a European perspective, we've made significant investments recently, both additional investment both in our Dublin capability for the Irish market, predominantly around SME and SMB, but moving up towards mid-enterprise, as well as our capability in UK as well, to effectively provide cloud services across the whole of Europe. So we have operations in both Sweden, France and so forth, both having the capability of selling the services directly into Dublin. So we see both a capability internally to Ireland, and the skills that we have within our organisation as well are exceptional, but also from an export of services to onboard to the infrastructure as a service which we have in Dublin as well, significant in terms of that strategy for Europe. You know, Dublin and Ireland plays a big part of that.
Certainly the impression I'm getting, and it'll be interesting to get your guys' view, is that yes, there's an increasing reluctance to actually, while the whole ethos behind the cloud is that the data should be able to go everywhere, but transferring it outside the EU is making people extremely nervous for two reasons. One is you have the compliance with the data protection legislation, yep. And two is people are nervous about where the data is going to be centred, and when it's in that particular jurisdiction it's going to be subject to the national laws.
I don't think people are worried about their data. I think lawyers are worried about people's data, right? And you know, there's a valid concern there, because essentially you have a legal responsibility to the businesses that you manage to make sure they understand the risks and rewards. But like, Gmail users don't seem to sweat too much that their emails splattered all over a million servers all over the world.
I don't think individuals are as an individual, I'm aware that I have all rights under data protection. Again, any data that I have in the web, I'm not concerned about it. About it going. I think it's corporates and confidential corporate information that people are concerned about.
Benefits, by and large, so wildly outweigh the potential risks for most businesses. Yeah, absolutely. If you're buying and selling multi-billion-dollar contracts for large commercial aircraft, well, we all know people pull all kinds of strokes in that marketplace. I mean, it's just a matter of fact. It's been well documented, and yet you need to take certain precautions. But for 95% of today's businesses, what they're concerned with is the stuff we talked about in the first section of the panel, which is reducing costs, increasing productivity, getting products to market, accessing more markets, and really most of the stuff that people scaremonger about security and accessibility and who might be looking at your stuff in the cloud is kind of redundant in many cases.
I think it's where the application use case is. So for example, as you say, email or something like a Salesforce customer relationship management system, I think it's more palatable to the user to say, yes, I can accept where that data may be anywhere in the cloud. But I think where you get down to kind of the 20-30% type application which has effectively some mission critical use case or confidential information, I think that's where I see a lot of the CIOs, CTOs I speak to is like, I do need to know where that's hosted. I need to know what the capability of having data portability to actually onboard the cloud. And if I were to go back in-house or to another provider, how do I export that data as well?
So it's like appropriate design and appropriate legal issues for the appropriate application that you're looking at. But I think fundamentally, obviously, there has to be like a business code of conduct that we do operate in for cloud. It's obviously an emerging market, and the chances are there for us to put a framework in place now that behaves appropriately for it without without choking it and not allowing it to develop and gain the the greater adoption, the ubiquitous adoption that we're looking to achieve.
I think the private cloud model that exists at the moment that's out there is one in which an easier adoption for enterprise can be made and an easier adoptive case can be made as well. I see at the moment enterprise is very interested in flirting with non-mission critical systems over onto cloud and using them as test cases. I see visionaries and evangelists within enterprise pitching the idea of cloud to their own business decision makers. And I think that what will happen over time is, first of all, people will see that the same security requirements that they would achieve right now under normal data center operations, they will achieve in private cloud. The hybrid then cloud model, which is a mixture between public and private, some will see benefits there for, say, web servers, running web servers on a hybrid model and running their database servers with all the security requirements there on a private model. And then eventually people may transition over to a more cloud-based model as the types of software and the way in which we do business changes. So it's all a gradual thing. It's as much psychological as it is financial, as it is technical.
It's an and function. It's not an or function.
Exactly.
We're going to use cloud computing and SaaS services, and we're going to have our own data centers. If anybody here has built a data center in the last 10 years, they're not about to throw it away.
Exactly.
Because there's significant capital investment there. And I see that the person who cracks the hybrid model, which says, I'm going to have a local cloud provider, who actually gives me a data center where I need it. I'm going to have a global cloud provider that gives me the reach from China to, the west coast of America. And I'm going to have a local data center manager that runs stuff that I just absolutely want to have locally. I mean, I don't care who you are, there's always an application which says, I've got to go and get the disks right now and burn them. There's a whole class of applications that say, we've got to destroy the data, or it's got to be erased, or it's got to be, taken out of this jurisdiction in a hurry.
Absolutely.
And
I think you've described a new IT department.
No, I think as well in terms of, and what I would call that is almost kind of cloud integration architecture. So where I see is kind of very much the CIO, CTO of the future would have effectively a dashboard seeing both the performance, availability and also cost with an application stack to the application, and that could be shared across, say, 3 or 4 different cloud providers. It could be internal as well, but again, I think there's 2 things here. One is the software to be developed in terms of is going to take some time, but also going back as well with regard to disk, the speed of light in terms of networks and so forth. There are fundamentals which need to be fixed first, like, for example, broadband, networking capability, obviously disk technology itself for effectively the hybrid in terms of being able to have that capability across all of my applications is going to take some time.